What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I'm your host, and my name is John, and we are back with episode 63, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC 238 pay-per-view going down this Saturday, June 8th, from Chicago, Illinois, starting at 6:30 p.m. The prelims will start on, I believe, ESPN Plus, then move to ESPN for the prelims at 8 p.m., and then at 10 p.m. we will transition back to ESPN Plus for the pay-per-view edition of this card. If you read the title of this podcast, it says I am joined by my friend Josh. He joins the podcast later for the main card portion of the podcast. So if you are looking to listen to just the portion where Josh is on and listen to the 5 main card fight analysis, then fast forward to the 42-minute mark. But I encourage you to stick around and listen to all 13 fights being broken down for you, because let me tell you something, the prelims of this card are incredible. I'm talking about 2 fights that I believe will determine the next number 1 contender at the men's bantamweight division and the women's strawweight division. Pedro Munhoz versus Aljamain Sterling. I think the winner of that fight fights the winner of Moraes and Cejudo, and the winner of Suarez and Ansaroff, I think, will be the next fighter for Jessica Andrade, unless Rose Namajunas has a rematch first. In that case, Suarez or Ansaroff will fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk next. But like I said, we got a ton of good fights on this prelim, so I advise you to stick around and hear the analysis for all 8 prelim fights in addition to the 5 main card fights. So starting things off in the flyweight division, we have Katlyn Chookagian, who is 11-2, taking on Joanne Calderwood, who is 13-3. The opening betting line for this fight was Joanne Calderwood, the favorite, at -175 to Katlyn Chookagian as the +135 underdog. Right now, looking over at 5dimes.eu, we see a pick'em fight at -110 for both fighters. So much more action coming in on the underdog, Katlyn Chookagian's way. And I agree with the line movement in this one. I think where the initial line was set was a little bit too in Calderwood's favor. I think this is a very close fight, 50-50 type of fight, which is why you are seeing the pick'em odds for this one. So Katlyn Chookagian is coming off of a loss to Jessica Eye in her last fight, but that fight, man, it was razor thin. And going back and scoring that fight, I scored it for Katlyn Chookagian. I gave her rounds 1 and 3 of that fight. She did well, outstriking Jessica Eye, I believe, throughout the entire fight, and just did a good job avoiding any of the aggression of Eye, avoiding the takedowns of Eye. And her jab and her push kick were on point, keeping Eye at distance. And it's a shame that Eye was given that decision. It was a close fight. It wasn't a robbery by any means. But I did give that fight to Chookagian, so she could be in the main event of the co-main event fighting for the title. But instead, she's kicking off the prelims as the first fight of the night. Interesting that they put this fight so low on the card as well. This is the number 3 and the number 5 flyweight ranked in the world. So, putting them as the first fight on the prelims is a little bit of disrespect in my opinion. This one should be a really good fight. Katlyn Chookagian actually has very solid jiu-jitsu as well. She doesn't really use it that much, but she does have very good jiu-jitsu. She was able to get back to her feet when she was taken down by Carmouche. She was not really in too much trouble versus Liz Carmouche, although she was taken down a few times by Liz in that fight. So, Calderwood also a very skilled striker and has a great jiu-jitsu game as well. She tapped out Kalindra Faria with the triangle in one of her most recent fights. And Joanne Calderwood herself is coming off of a decision victory as well over, let's see who that was, Ariane Lipski. That's right, Lipski was making her debut, came in as a very hyped fighter, came in the favor of that matchup, and Joanne Calderwood came in as an underdog and shut down Lipski in that fight. Her striking looked very good in that fight. She was throwing up arm bars off of her back. I'm impressed with both these ladies. They're both improving a lot. So coming down to this matchup, I think that on the ground they will pretty much cancel each other out. I think if we see this fight go to the ground, it will be Calderwood entering the grappling realm of things. I think that she will be the one initiating the takedown. But I think Chookagian's defense is good enough to avoid a submission in this one. So I see it playing out on the feet. And although Calderwood is very solid on the feet, she has a good varied offense on the feet with her kicks and punches, and a very good clinch game as well. I just think that Chookagian's, her leg kicks, her teep kick, and her jab is going to pose a lot of problems for Calderwood, just like it does most women in the division. She usually keeps her opponents away at distance with that jab and with that teep, so I expect that to come into play here. So I'm gonna pick Chookagian to win this decision 29-28. But it's not a confident pick at all because Chookagian does have a habit of making fights closer than they need to be. Almost all of her fights are, 29-28 decisions or split decisions. And, though, that really cost her in her last fight, losing that split decision and losing her title shot. So hopefully Chookagian will come out a little more aggressive this time. And I'm picking Katlyn Chookagian to win by decision. Next fight is in the bantamweight division. We got Eddie Wineland, who is 23-13, taking on Grigory Popov, who is 14-2. Popov is making his UFC debut in this one, and the opening betting line for this one was Wineland -145 to Popov at +105. Right now we are seeing Wineland -130 to Popov at +110. So two-way action coming in on this fight. It is a close type of fight. Popov is a Russian guy. A lot of Russians get a lot of respect coming in their UFC debuts. But, I really have not seen too much impressive from Popov, honestly. He's fought in very low-level competition. He's, not really looked too dominant or impressive versus them either. He was, taken down by a one-on-one fighter, but with the last name of Chen, and was, getting hit with some pretty heavy ground and pound off of his back in that fight. He was losing the fight to Chen in that fight, and eventually came back in the third round and got the head kick knockout for the victory, the come-from-behind victory, and really, saved him in that fight. So if Popov was struggling with a fighter who was 1-1, I am not very confident in him coming in here versus an experienced veteran in Eddie Wineland and getting the victory in that fight. So based on that fact alone, just, kind of wiki capping, although I did, study both of these fighters, just looking at the records of the two, one has struggled with decent to low-level competition. And then Eddie Wineland has been in the UFC for 5-10 years, fighting some of the highest level competition and holding his own. Even in his last fight against Alejandro Perez, who was a top 15 bantamweight at the time, Wineland went in there and gave him a close decision. I did think he lost that fight. He was, outstruck by, just a small margin throughout the entire fight. But Wineland, his boxing looked on point on that fight. The thing about Popov is that his ground game is quite poor. He has been able to submit a couple of his low-level opponents with Gogo Platas and some nice submissions, but man, I don't think that's going to work against Eddie Wineland. I think that anybody with decent grappling defense at best will be able to avoid those subs off of Popov's back. But Eddie Wineland hasn't hit an offensive takedown since 2011. So I do not see Wineland coming in here and implementing a grappling game plan. So I think this one will play out on the feet. So I give Wineland a slight edge in this one just because I think he's more experienced. He's fought the better competition. I think he has the better striking technique overall. Popov does have some flashy kicks and stuff like that he can catch you with. That's how he won his fight with Getu Hexy. He was losing that fight to Hexy for 2 or 3 rounds, and then in the third round he hit him with a jumping front kick and knocked him out for the victory. So Popov, is dangerous. He definitely has power, not too much technique on the feet, but he's got power. So the way I see this fight going out is I see Eddie Wineland outstriking Popov to a decision. I see, Wineland just outboxing him. He really only boxes, maybe, throws the occasional kick in there, leg kick, but really just a boxing attack from Eddie Wineland. But, Wineland's not perfect, man. He is, an older fighter. He does have close to 40 fights. He keeps his hands pretty low when he fights, and he was getting hit with some pretty solid shots versus Alejandro Perez, but his chin was holding strong. So I like Wineland's chances to avoid that big power shot of Popov at any time, and I see Wineland getting the decision victory 29-28 in this one. Next fight in the middleweight division, we got Bivon Lewis, who is 6-1, taking on Darren Stewart, who is 9-4. the opening betting line for this one was Bevon Lewis, the favorite, at -155 to Darren Stewart, the +115 underdog. Right now we are seeing Lewis -175 to Stewart +155. So more action coming in the way of the favorite, Bevon Lewis. He was actually bet all the way down to -230, 240, and stood at -230 or 40 for around 2 or 3 weeks. But in the past 24 hours, really, some heavy action has come in on Darren Stewart, pushing this line back to where it opened up at. So I agree with where the late line movement has come in. I think that Bevon Lewis being a -250 favorite in this fight after the way he lost his last fight is just, inexcusable. Bevon Lewis, he did look very sharp in his UFC debut. He was outstriking Uriah Hall, the seasoned veteran, in that fight. He was showing off his offensive striking, using that oblique kick, the head kick. He's got a solid clinch game, good knees and elbows in the clinch. He trains with John Jones, and you can really tell it. He has good dirty boxing and elbows in the clinch, and that oblique kick. A lot of similarities from John Jones in the striking of Bevon Lewis. But, he was outstriking Uriah Hall clean all fight. It was a pretty dominant performance from Lewis. And then he got countered. He threw a sloppy overhand, and he got one punch knockout countered by Uriah Hall. So, not a good sign from Lewis. The fact that he was dominating that fight. If there was a live betting line for that fight, he would have been -900 at the time. And he still managed to lose that fight after, making one mistake. All he had to do was make one sloppy overhand, and Hall was there to knock him out. But luckily, he's not fighting an experienced veteran like Uriah Hall this fight. He's taking on Darren Stewart, who is, a bit of a madman. He likes to get in the brawls on feet. He likes to get in brawls on the feet. He likes getting in that pocket and trading. And he's had some crazy, crazy fights in his time. The Spicy fight, the Charles Byrd fight where he was losing that fight and came back and TKO'd Byrd in that fight. So Stewart does have the ability to, be outstruck, be, beaten with technique like he did versus Charles Byrd, and then still catch you with a punch and, knock you out and come from behind and get that victory. But, it takes a special type of fighter to get your ass kicked for 11, 12 minutes and still be looking for that one mistake. And that's what Uriah Hall did. It didn't matter that he was getting outstruck clean all fight. He was still focused on, winning that fight. He was waiting for one little window of opportunity, and he found it, and he capitalized big time. Stewart does not have that ability at all. He did, like I said, he did have that come from behind victory versus Charles Byrd, but it's nothing to the level of that Uriah Hall comeback. So, I think that Stewart will give the fight that Lewis wants, and he's going to, stand in front and trade. So Stewart, does have a little bit of a wrestling problem. He was out-grappled by Edmund Shevchenko last fight. Just a really sloppy grappling, wrestling match that entire fight. And, props to Shevchenko. He went in there facing a heavy hitter like Stewart and realized that he had that bad ground game, and he didn't want to take a risk that fight, and he just decided to grapple, and he won the fight pretty easily. So I don't think Lewis will do the same. It will be a smart game plan to do that, to exploit the grappling of Stewart. But I just see Lewis keeping this fight on the feet, using his superior striking, his crisp technique, and, outstriking Darren Stewart to a decision. I'm going to go 30-27 in this one. I don't think Lewis will take many risks in this one. I think that after that last fight, it's going to leave a bad taste in his mouth, and he's going to play this one super safe. He's going to keep this fight at range, using that oblique kick, using that teep kick, that head kick, and his straight punches, and just keeping this one, at range. But if Stewart's able to get into that pocket, is able to, start throwing hooks, close that distance, and get this one into a firefight, man, that favors him. And I think that Stewart is the harder puncher of the two. I think Lewis is more of a volume guy, a more technique kind of guy, while Stewart is just a powerful striker, man. So this one should be a really good fight. Stewart does have a chance to win this fight. So that's why I'm agreeing with the late line movement, pushing this fight to a more reasonable line. I don't think Lewis at -250 is a good bet at all, but I'd say the odds are pretty much accurate where they are now, with Lewis -175, Stewart +155. So I'm going to pick Bevon Lewis to get his first UFC victory in this fight with a 30-27 decision. Next fight in the women's strawweight division, we got Xiaonan, who is 10-1, taking on Angela Hill, who is 9-6. The opening betting line for this fight was Xiaonan as the -135 favorite to Hill at -105. Right now we are seeing Yan -155 to Hill +135. So much more action coming in on the Chinese prospect, Xiaonan. If you looked at this woman's name, you'd never guess that Xiaonan is in there, but Xiaonan, I guess, in Chinese converts to Xiaonan. I was actually pretty surprised to hear that in the commentary. But, Xiaonan has looked good in the UFC so far, but her competition has been, quite low. She picked up, look at her last fight, Siri Kondo, Viviana Pereira. Man, these women are bottom of the barrel. No disrespect to them, but she's fighting a whole new monster in Angela Hill in this one. Angela Hill has fought the best of the best in the UFC strawweight division. She's been in Invicta. She was on The Ultimate Fighter. She's fought in, Nina Ansaroff, Jessica Andrade. I think she fought Nami Yunus on the show, Tisha Torres. Angela Hill is a consistent gatekeeper in the women's 115-pound division. And, I'm a big fan of the girl. She, fought pretty recently, around 6 weeks ago, and, picked up that decision victory over Jodie Esquibel. Even before that, she was fighting Randa Marcos. So this is going to be Angela Hill's third fight within the span of about 3 months. So respect to her. She's staying active and she's racking up some nice performances along the way. She did have that setback to Randa Marcos where she was taken down, pressured with the top pressure of Randa Marcos, and then eventually tapped out with an armbar. But Xiaonan is not going to come in here to grapple. Actually, Xiaonan has shown a bit of a weakness in the grappling. She was taken down by Kaylin Curran. Didn't look too good off of her back. Spent some time there, especially in round 3. She was quite tired in round 3. Got taken down and really couldn't get off of her back at all in that fight. She was taken down in the early rounds and she was able to get back to her feet. But as the fight went later, she was not able to grapple too well. So Xiaonan's striking does look pretty solid. She's very technical. She's got, good side kicks. She'll go to the body. She'll go to the head with the side kicks. She throws real power into her punches, man. She gets mean in that octagon, and she, comes in aggressive. She tries marching you down, and she's had some success, beating those lower level women who will stand in front of her, who don't have very good striking or good footwork, and have struggled with the leg kicks of Xiaonan. But Angela Hill, I think she lives for this type of fight. She's facing, another solid kickboxer, another girl who likes throwing kicks, who's very aggressive, and I think this matchup is in Angela Hill's favor big time. So Angela Hill has fought, I want to say, half a dozen women who are better on paper than Xiaonan. But this is going to be Xiaonan's toughest fight of her career. Angela Hill has held her own in there versus, like I said, girls like Torres. And she had a competitive fight with Jessica Andrade. She was landing... That's a very similar type of fight, where Andrade is going to be marching forward the entire time, like I expect Xiaonan to. But Hill's going to be there, landing those leg kicks, landing solid punches. And I don't think that Xiaonan is going to have nearly the aggression, nearly the power of Jessica Andrade. And I actually see Angela Hill outstriking Xiaonan in this matchup. I see Hill using that good footwork, her good leg kicks, that solid clinch game of Hill, that great Muay Thai background she comes from. And I just see her using the more of, varied offense, mixing it up with the kicks and the punches, mixing up the clinch, maybe even going for her own takedown after seeing that weakness in the grappling of Xiaonan in this one. So I expect this one to be a really good fight. I think it will be contested mostly on the feet. And, I'm not totally counting out Xiaonan. She could step up to the plate big time in this one and outstrike Angela Hill. But I'm picking my girl Angela Overkill Hill to get the decision victory in this one, 29-28. And looking at the betting lines, man, Angela Hill, at one point, I think she was plus 155. Yeah, man, plus 175, 55. She's been hovering around plus 155 all week, and now her line is dropping a little more back down to evens at plus 135. So Angela Hill is a good underdog play in this one, and I think I will be, betting 1 unit on her myself. So cheering for Hill this weekend, and I'm expecting a good fight out of that one. Next fight in the featherweight division, we got Ricardo Lamas, who is 19-7, taking on Calvin Kattar, who is 19-3. The opening betting line for this one was Calvin Kattar, the favorite, at -165 to Ricardo Lamas at +125. Right now, over on 5 Dimes, we are seeing Kattar -145, Lamas +125. So line margins have tightened up. It actually sits right now pretty much the exact same line that what it opened at. But money's been coming in both ways on this one. I'd say more money has come in on Calvin Kattar. Actually, Lamas was up to a +150 underdog just a few days ago. But again, that late money has started coming in on the right side, in my opinion, Ricardo Lamas. So let me just go ahead and say that both of these guys are terrific fighters. Both of them have, consistently impressed me throughout their UFC tenures. And, Kattar is a bit shorter. Lamas has been around for a few years, but Kattar has only had, I think, 3 or 4 fights in the UFC, but he's really made an impression. He came in picking up that 3-1 underdog victory over Andre Fili in his first fight. Then he went in and knocked out Shane Burgos. Had that setback where he was, outclassed versus Renato Moicano, then bounced back with that nice win over Chris Fishgold. That's just going off of memory. I'm not even looking at his record. I'm just, really a big fan of Calvin Kattar and everything that he's done so far in the UFC. So Calvin Kattar, we'll go over some of the things he does well. He's got one of the best jabs in MMA to go along with just a solid boxing fundamentals all around. Good defense. The one thing that I think is his Achilles heel is the leg kicks. He struggled with the leg kicks big time versus Renato Moicano. It was a competitive fight in round 1, but once Moicano realized that he wasn't checking leg kicks, he started going to the well with that leg kick, and then everything else followed. Then Moicano started outstriking Kattar, started landing heavy body kicks, and mixing it up with the leg kicks. And in rounds 2 and 3, Moicano put a beat down on Calvin Kattar in that fight, mostly revolved around the leg kicks. So, Calvin Kattar has struggled with leg kicks throughout his entire fight career. And, even in the commentary of that fight against Moicano, he was, kind of roasted a bit by the commentators. They were like, man, I can't believe he's 21 fights into his career and he can't check a leg kick yet. So, going back and watching that one himself, I would be shocked to see if Kattar came in here with that hole in his game still, I'm hoping, even though I think the betting value is on Ricardo Lamas in this one, and I already have a bet locked in on Ricardo Lamas, I'm hoping Calvin Kattar does come in with that leg kick defense, a lot better, starts checking leg kicks, because that's just going to be a bad sign for his career if he, lost that Moicano fight, his only fight in the UFC so far, mostly due to leg kicks, and he still hasn't fixed that hole in his game. So, and, it's bad. He better fix it, because Ricardo Lamas has got great leg kicks, man. He in his most recent fight against Darren Elkins, he was really attacking that lead leg of Darren Elkins. He was chopping down at it. Not only does he have good timing on the leg kicks, his placement, is really well. He doesn't go to the thigh. He goes to the knee. And he goes to the calf, the places where you get hit in that part of your leg, and it shuts that leg down. So Ricardo Lamas also has a very solid boxing game to go along with his leg kicks. Got a great wrestling base, can defend a takedown well, can hit his own offensive takedowns well. Was taking down Darren Elkins, at will in their fight. He just sets him up so well, gets you thinking about the punches and then changes levels really well. And Ricardo Lamas also has a really wicked guillotine. He tapped Charles Oliveira with his guillotine. He was into some trouble in that fight versus Oliveira early, but defended some choke attempts from Oliveira, and then got his own choke in the second round of that fight. So Lamas is really just a amazing overall well-rounded fighter. I think that he's the more well-rounded mixed martial artist by a pretty decent margin in this fight. So Kattar, he does have a path of victory. It would be checking leg kicks, hitting that jab, keeping those punches long, and that's how he's going to beat Ricardo Lamas in this one. You're going to have to outstrike Lamas on at distance in order to beat him. Lamas's most recent loss was to Mirsad Bektic, and that fight was, a stalling against the cage type of fight where Bektic was trying to grapple, was trying to initiate the takedown, and it ended up in a lot of stalemates against the cage. That's not Calvin Kattar's style at all. He's a boxer. He wants to come in here and throw hands, and that's what he's best at doing. So Kattar, if he's able to check the leg kicks, if he's able to start landing that jab and landing his straight punches, avoiding the takedown of Lamas, I see him outstriking Lamas to this fight. But if Kattar has not fixed that leg kick defense, I think Lamas is going to be attacking that lead leg heavy. I think he's going to be mixing it up with the takedowns in this fight. I think that he will be the better grappler by a quite large margin versus Calvin Kattar in this one. So Kattar wants to avoid the ground at any means possible. So I just think that Lamas has more tools to win this fight. I think that leg kick is a big, big key. I think that his boxing is good enough to hang with Kattar's, and I think that his wrestling is a good plan B if the Kattar starts landing that jab and causes some problems for Lamas. I see him closing that distance and trying to take this fight to the floor and either tap out Kattar with that solid guillotine, or maybe just ride this one out on the scorecards with a grappling heavy decision. So I'm picking the underdog, Ricardo Lamas, in this one. I would not be mad if Kattar pulled it off. I'm really a big fan of the guy. Like I said, I would like to see him improve that checking those leg kicks so he can really excel to that elite level of fighter. Because if he does not patch up that hole in his game, man, it's gonna be a set ceiling for Calvin Kattar in the UFC. So I'm picking Ricardo Lamas to get this one done. I'm gonna go with the 29-28 decision for Lamas. Next fight is in the women's strawweight division. We got Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who is 12-4, taking on Alexa Grasso, who is 10-2. The opening betting line for this one was Karolina Kowalkiewicz opening as the favorite at -195 to Alexa Grasso, the +155 underdog. Right now, we are seeing Kowalkiewicz -115 to Grasso at -105. So pretty ridiculous line opening there, in my opinion. Kowalkiewicz coming off of that loss to Michelle Waterson just about 3 months ago, where she was, beaten in all aspects of that fight. She was out-clinched, outstruck at distance, and out-grappled. So it was a pretty bad showing from Kowalkiewicz, one of her worst performances in the UFC. And, you look at Kowalkiewicz's last couple of fights, she was taken down and tapped out really quickly versus Claudia Gadelha. She was knocked out versus Jessica Andrade. And then she lost that decision to Michelle Waterson. Even her only really impressive victory in the past couple of years comes over Felice Harrigan. Even that was a split decision. So, Kowalkiewicz, I believe, is on a decline. I think that, she's let's see how old she is. She's 33 years old. She has talked about, wanting to retire and start a family soon. I think that she even mentioned in an interview where she's getting kind of paranoid about, her age and, hoping that she can still have kids, seeing as she's getting out there. So I really think that she's got one foot out the door. Don't mean to bring her personal life into the analysis, but I really think it comes into play in this one. I think that she had a real bad taste in her mouth after that Michelle Waterson loss and just tried to get back in there as quickly as possible without really fixing any of those holes in her game, figuring out why she looked so flat in that fight versus Waterson. I expected Kowalkiewicz to win that fight, honestly. I thought that she would be out clinching Waterson. I thought that, her striking her boxing would be, the thing that would outstrike Waterson at range, but she struggled with Waterson's kicks. She struggled with the takedowns. Even the clinch game, where Kowalkiewicz used to have a really solid clinch game and good knees and elbows and output constantly, Michelle Waterson won the clinch in that fight. So based on that fact alone, I'm thinking that, Grasso, I think, still got 2 feet in the door. I think that she, is still fighting hard to get that respect that she's deserved in the UFC, because she's underperforming in the UFC for sure. She came in, I think, as an Invicta champion. She might have even been undefeated, and she came into the UFC and really got fed to the wolves. Yeah, she came in as Invicta FC, I believe, a champion. Beat Heather Jo Clark, then lost the decision to Felice Herrig, bounced back with a nice win over Randa Marcos, and then was dominated in her last fight by Tatiana Suarez. No shame in that loss to Tatiana Suarez. Suarez would have done the exact same thing to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And I'm impressed with Grasso still. I think that she will be the better mixed martial artist in the cage on Saturday night. I think that she's improved her striking. She looked a little tentative and a little scared versus Felice Herrig. She keeps her hands, glued to her chin. Her punches are a little bit predictable. But then after that, in the Marcos fight, she started to loosen up a little bit. She started to, be more aggressive. She started to flow in the cage a little more. And she definitely looked much, much improved in that fight. So I think Grasso is still improving. I think that she really hasn't shown her full potential in the UFC yet. While I think Karolina Kowalkiewicz's full potential in the UFC was about a couple years ago in her win over Rose Namajunas. I think that was really her best. That was her ceiling, honestly. So not totally counting Kowalkiewicz out. She's a very experienced fighter. She might, be hungry for this win. She might be anxious to get back in the cage and erase that last bad performance versus Michelle Waterson and get back in here with a win over Grasso. But I see it being a close type of fight. I think that it'll be contested mostly in the kickboxing aspect of things. And I just think that Grasso will be the more physical and aggressive fighter. I think that Grasso will be leg kicking a lot in this fight. It's going to cause problems for Kowalkiewicz and her movement. And I see Grasso, just getting the better of the striking exchanges and winning this decision 29-28. I think that's maybe my fourth or fifth time in a row saying 29-28 decision. Yeah. But, I'm picking a decision in this one. We're going to expect a lot of kickboxing matches in this card. Not a bad thing, but I think that a lot of these matchups will just play out on the feet. So that's just how I think this one's going to go. So moving on to the bantamweight division, we got Pedro Munhoz, who is 18-3, taking on Aljamain Sterling, who is 17-3. The opening betting line for this one was Pedro Munhoz, the favorite, at -125, to Sterling, slight underdog at -115. Right now, over on 5 Dimes, we are seeing Aljamain Sterling -125 to Pedro Munhoz at +105. So, a little more action coming in on Aljamain Sterling's way. Earlier in the week, Munhoz was up to +120, +115, but again, that late action coming in on Pedro Munhoz. This is, such a wicked close type of fight. Both of these guys are incredible bantamweights. I really think that, that we really haven't even seen the best from both of these guys yet. I think that they're constantly improving fight to fight. You saw that in Aljamain Sterling's most recent fight against Jimmy Rivera. His boxing looked improved in that fight. He, was just really, really on point. So, Aljamain Sterling, he's really well-rounded. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter out of the two of them. He's got great kicks. He can keep you at range all fight and just kick you from 5 feet away if he chose to. He's got a great wrestling game. He stuff takedowns well. He has a vast array of offensive takedowns, real good submissions. He really came into the UFC submitting everyone and then has really evolved his game to be a great, well-rounded mixed martial artist. So sometimes he doesn't set up his takedowns too well. I think that was a little bit of a problem in the Jimmy Rivera fight. He actually started that fight just looking for a takedown right away. I think he was just trying to, gas Rivera out on the clinch, get him thinking about the takedown and then really start to set up his striking. So, Aljamain does have his weaknesses, though. I think that the setting up the takedowns, that could be a problem at sometimes. Sometimes he has that telegraphed takedown, and you better be careful about that against Pedro Munhoz, because Pedro Munhoz has got one of the best guillotines in all of mixed martial arts. So if Sterling leaves his neck out going for a sloppy takedown, look for Munhoz to snatch that shit up. But Aljamain Sterling, also, his chin is, I wouldn't say it's, in question, but he did get knocked out by Marlon Moraes about 1.5 years ago with that head kick. And, vicious shot that he took in that fight, that would knock out a mule. So no shame in that loss at all. And we've really seen very few weaknesses from Aljamain Sterling throughout his entire UFC career. Let me think of who else he lost to. Aljamain Sterling, split decision loss. Brian Caraway, split decision loss. Yeah, so only one guy, and Marlon Moraes, the guy who's fighting for the belt this weekend, has really, fully beaten Aljamain Sterling. So, moving on to Pedro Munhoz, man, this dude never ever has a boring fight. Actually, he had one boring fight against John Dodson, but his last fight against Cody Garbrandt, man, what an electric fight that was. It was a close fight in the first couple of minutes, and then the two accidentally headbutted one another. Pedro Munhoz ended up in top position, had some heavy half guard, but he literally just let Cody up. Like he got back to his feet on his own will, even though he was in top position. Then just started, exchanging in the pocket with Cody Garbrandt, man. Munhoz trusted his chin. He knew that he would get in that brawl. He was willing to do it, and he was just confident in himself. Cody, not so much. He caught Cody with two back-to-back right hands that put Cody down, and he got the finish in the first round. So just an incredible performance from from Pedro Munhoz, knocking out the former champion in Cody Garbrandt in that fight. Just really impressed with, Munhoz's, confidence in himself. You got to be, very, very confident in yourself to get in a brawl with an experienced, powerful boxer like Cody Garbrandt. But he knew Garbrandt had that weakness, that chin, and that defense, and he trusted himself to expose it, and he did, and he got that very big victory over Munhoz, over Garbrandt. So, getting down to how these two match up, man, I see it being a really, really close fight. But I see Sterling having the edge on the feet in this one. I think that the kicks of Sterling will pose a lot of problems for Munhoz in this one. I think that Munhoz will have trouble getting the range because Sterling is going to be constantly using those kicks, staying at distance, keeping Munhoz to the gut, and not letting him get in that pocket where Munhoz is so good with those, powerful hooks and knocking you out. So if this fight goes to the floor, that's when it gets real interesting. I think it's actually closer matched up on the floor. I think that Munhoz has a good chance at snatching that guillotine of Sterling. I think that Sterling has a good chance at, to pushing Munhoz against the cage, lulling him into a boring fight, maybe taking him down and stalling out in top position and winning rounds that way. But I expect this one to be a really back and forth type of fight. I do not have a clear lean in this one, but I slightly lean Aljamain Sterling's way. I just think that he has the better overall game. I was really impressed with his boxing improvements last fight. I think that he could hang with the boxing of Munhoz. I think that he will actually be a step ahead of Munhoz on the ground if he chooses to offensive grapple in this matchup. So the winner of this fight, I believe, is next up to face the winner of the main event in either Cejudo or Moraes. It should be an incredible fight. I wish it was 5 rounds, but we have to settle for 3 rounds. It really should be on the main card, in my opinion, but the UFC is saving a good fight for the ESPN prelims. So the pick in this one is going to be Sterling to get it done by decision. Next fight in the women's strawweight division, we have Tatiana Suarez, who is undefeated at 7-0, taking on Nina Ansaroff, who is 10-5. The opening betting line for this one was Tatiana Suarez, the favorite, at -515 to Nina Ansaroff, the +345 underdog. Right now, over on 5Dimes, we are seeing Suarez -850 to Ansaroff, +575. So, massive action coming in on the massive favorite, Tatiana Suarez, in this one. You know what we're looking at in this one. It's Suarez has looked nothing but dominant in the UFC so far. Has used his spams high kicks, body kicks to close the distance on the feet, and then just has a very vast array of takedowns. Strings together takedowns very quick. Maybe the best wrestling we've ever seen from a female in the UFC. Her top pressure is relentless. She's not going to let you off of out of bottom position. No chance. I think Carla did get back to her feet a few times, but man, Suarez just keeps that body lock and will drag you back down to the canvas. Really similar to the Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting style. And once Suarez has you on her back, she again has vicious ground and pound, hammer fist elbows. She's trying to hurt you when she gets you on the ground. Now, she can, she only has 7 fights in the UFC or in MMA total, so she can make mistakes. She did use a head and arm throw versus Alexa Grasso. So there is, room for it to be, a mistake to be made and for Ansaroff to pull off the victory in this one. But man, that window is small. It's very small for Nina Ansaroff, unfortunately, and because Nina Ansaroff has been one of the most improved females on the UFC roster, in my opinion. I've really enjoyed Nina Ansaroff's fights lately. Her takedown defense has gotten better, her striking has gotten better, and she's, picked up 3 solid wins in a row. And those wins are over real good competition. Randa Marcos, not an easy fight for any woman in the division. Got taken down early versus in that fight, and then was able to start stuffing the takedowns in rounds 2 and 3 and outstriking Marcos to a decision. But what I just said there is why I think that Nina Ansaroff does not have much of a chance in this fight. If Randa Marcos was able to take you down, I don't see Tatiana Suarez having much trouble taking you down either. Now, no disrespect to Marcos, she does have a very good wrestling pedigree, but I think that Suarez is just levels ahead in the wrestling category, levels ahead of any woman in the UFC right now. I really pity Nina Ansaroff for taking this fight. Respect to her. She's a warrior. She believes that she can win, but she racked up that good win streak, those 3 wins, and in my opinion, Suarez has already done enough to earn the title shot, but she's getting Nina Ansaroff in this fight. She's probably going to snap Ansaroff's 3-fight winning streak, and Ansaroff has been a little iffy about her MMA career, so I hope that Nina Ansaroff sticks around after this fight, even if she loses, and continues to improve as an MMA fighter. So despite Ansaroff's huge improvements in the past couple of years, I still think it's not going to be enough to stuff the takedowns to get back to her feet or to possibly outstrike Suarez in the feet. I just think that the takedown is inevitable. I think that Suarez will use those kicks to close the distance. She'll get the takedown, and then it will be, smashing from then on out. I honestly see Ansaroff being tough enough and being solid defensively enough to grind this one out on the scorecards. I think that she will survive to see the final bell, but I expect it to be a dominant decision. I expect Tatiana Suarez to win this one 30-27, and like I said, she should be next in line for the 115-pound title. Suarez versus Andrade would be an incredible fight, but if Rose Namajunas does get that immediate rematch versus Jessica Andrade, then I think that Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Tatiana Suarez will be an incredible fight. So that's going to do it for the prelims, and now we are transitioning to the main card where my friend Josh will join me to help me break down all 5 of these incredible main card fights. Alright, we are back with the main card analysis of the UFC 238 pay-per-view going down this Saturday night, and I got my man Josh with me right now. Say what's up, Josh.
How you guys doing? This is Josh here.
We both think of ourselves as amateur mixed martial artists at this point in time, although, we have no proof to go along with it, but we both train jiu-jitsu, both train Muay Thai, and we are chilling at my gym right now after getting done some training. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Josh, before we get into these 5 main card fights.
So I've been training for about a year now, consistently about 2 to 3 times a day, depending on the day. Just really fell in love with martial arts. Been watching UFC and boxing since I was a little kid. Was always pretty active, and then just decided after high school I wanted to get into fighting. And I mean, honestly, I just can't really say much more about it. I love, analyzing fights. I love looking at, 2 different dudes with 2 different skill sets and seeing what they bring to the table. And then my man over here's got his podcast, so I mean, I would love to hop on and just talk about some fights all day. I mean, I can go for days about this stuff.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and I said that let's save it for a special card, and we got a special card ahead of us right now, man. This pay-per-view is so stacked. You just heard about some of the crazy fights on the prelims. We were talking about it ourselves, The prelims of this card could be on a pay-per-view of a different card.
Absolutely.
It's kind of questionable matchmaking, putting Sterling and Munhoz on the prelims while you got 2 fat, sloppy heavyweights like Tuivasa and Ivanov on the main card. So you mentioned that earlier. You think that the Sterling and Munhoz for the number 1 contenders fight deserves to be on the main card instead of the prelims?
I mean, to me, that's a main card fight. I mean, just looking at the skill sets that they bring, Pedro Munhoz coming off of a great performance, his last fight, Aljamain Sterling just kind of got to get back in the swing of things. I mean, but that matchup is great. I just don't see that being a prelim fight. I see that being a main card fight. I just don't know why that got moved to the prelims. I think that they should have maybe saved that for a different card, put that on the main card. I mean, we've seen these cards be all over the place. Sometimes they have a stacked main card. Other times it's not really anything special. They have a great main event, and then the other kind of main card fights are just kind of sloppy, put together kind of simply. But we'll see how it goes though.
Yeah, it seems like almost every single UFC pay-per-view, they bury a really solid card on the prelims, and then they leave a kind of a decent to low-level fight on the main card. But they must have a method to their madness, because I guess the formula is working out. My idea, honestly, was to put Shevchenko and I as the main event of the prelims. That way, you get a title fight on ESPN, you get some spotlight onto the lesser-known division, the lesser-known stars like Shevchenko, and you likely get a fight that is a pretty one-sided beatdown for Shevchenko to display her high-level skills. But I don't really see the UFC doing that. That's kind of like an out-of-the-box thinking type of move on my behalf. But with that being said, we're going to start things off with the first fight on the main card, and it is in the heavyweight division. We got Tuivasa, who is 10-1, taking on Blagoy Ivanov, who is 17-2. Now, the opening betting line for this one was Tuivasa, the -165 favorite, to Ivanov at +125. Right now, over on 5Dimes, we are seeing Tuivasa at -145 to Ivanov at +125. So, not much line movement on this one. There's definitely two-way action coming in on this fight. People are betting both sides. It's a fairly close matchup, but I do lean Tuivasa's way. Which way are you thinking, Josh?
Absolutely, I lead more towards Tuivasa. I mean, that size, that reach. He's got literally 5 inches on him, only a 2-inch reach advantage, but 14 pounds. I mean, I'm not really going to go into the specifics of that kind of stuff. Just this fight, in the heavyweight division, also it goes back and forth. Anything can really happen. Anybody can get hit with a bomb and get dropped. But I'm definitely leaning more towards Tuivasa for sure.
Yeah, I think both of these guys are pretty similar fighters to one another. They both mostly box. They really don't have much other game besides boxing. Tuivasa did get that flying knee knockout in his UFC debut over Rashad Coulter. That was his I think, best moment in the UFC so far. He had that lackluster decision win over Ansaroff last Chicago pay-per-view, and then he went in there against Junior Dos Santos, had some early success, but then was knocked down himself, and then mounted and pounded out for the ground and pound finish by Junior Dos Santos there. So, Tuivasa's ground game is pretty much non-existent. He was mounted and trying to punch his opponent from being mounted. That just shows how bad his ground game was. Michael Bisping was actually making fun of him a little bit after that fight. But Tuivasa was taking it to Junior Dos Santos in the first round of their fight, and Ivanov fought Junior Dos Santos too, and he never really had too much success. In round 3, I think he might have clipped JDS momentarily, but that fight was mostly just Junior Dos Santos outstriking Ivanov for 24 out of 25 minutes of that fight. But man, I'm really frustrated about this fight, because Blagoy Ivanov is one of the worst fighters on this roster, man. All he does is box. He circles in the same direction, the most predictable way ever. He has low intensity, low output fights. He doesn't have any power. All he does is box, and his boxing's not even that good. So, and the thing I'm looking about this last fight is that he fought Ben Rothwell. He got gifted a decision against Ben Rothwell in that fight, but the leg kicks were getting to Ivanov in that fight. That was a terrible decision. A lot of people were angry about that one. But, I didn't really care. I thought it was a pretty, like I said, it was a low output, low intensity fight. So you're bound to get an iffy decision on that one. But I think Tuivasa will take the fight to Ivanov. He'll be working that leg kick, and I think he'll outbox Ivanov. I do not see a knockout, honestly. I think Tuivasa will probably take this one to the scorecards and win a decision that way. You going with Tuivasa or by knockout or decision?
I'm going to go with, both these guys with their boxing, with the output that they're going to, be coming at each other. We'll see, how aggressive they're going to both start out, coming out of the gate. If Tuivasa wants to press forward on the smaller guy, throw some hands, and really try to be the aggressor, I see it, coming away a knockout. If they're both kind of, staying away from each other, just kind of, beating around the bush a little bit, not really wanting to get clipped with anything, so they're staying on the outside. Ivanov doing, the usual just, regular circle and stuff. I don't really see, much happening in, that way, so I would see a decision coming out of that, but hopefully we'll see a knockout from the heavyweights, the only ones really on this main card, so hopefully we get a nice, bomb.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the same thing, but I'm prepared for another low output decision.
Yeah, for sure, low output. That's probably going to be key words right there, low output.
Nice. Well, we're in agreement with that one. So next fight is in the bantamweight division. We got Jimmy Rivera, who is 22-3, taking on Petr Yan, who is 12-1. Now, the opening betting line for this one was Rivera, the plus 165 underdog, to Yan at the minus 215 favorite. Right now, over on 5Dimes, we are seeing Petr Yan minus 325 to Jimmy Rivera at plus 265. So a lot more money coming in on the favorite, Petr Yan, pushing him from a moderate favorite to a big favorite. So I agree with the line movement in this one. I like Petr Yan a lot in this spot. What are you thinking about this one, Josh?
I do like Petr Yan just in the way of aggressiveness. Coming out of Russia, these dudes, notorious for just being psychos, going in there, and just having major success, just pressing forward, having that mentality of they're not going to stop, not going to get tired. Also, there's not really much discrepancies between these two dudes in size, I should say. But it's really a toss up. But I'm leaning more towards Petr Yan. To be honest, he to me, he shows me that he's going to be able to just put outstanding pressure on Jimmy Rivera, not taking anything away from him, but with that amount of pressure in his face the whole time, constantly getting walked down, I don't really see much of a different outcome.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. So in the betting aspect of things, I do agree with Yan being the favorite, but I would probably say that where the line sits at right now is a little too high. Jimmy Rivera did have an off fight last fight against Aljamain Sterling. He said it on the corner, in his corner of that fight, that he just doesn't feel like himself, doesn't feel right, and I don't think he was making any excuses. We've seen at one point Jimmy Rivera, I think, was on like an 18 or 19 fight win streak, then got knocked out by Moraes, bounced back with a quick decision win over Dodson, and then suffered that decision loss to Aljamain Sterling. He was basically out wrestled in that fight. He was actually dropped with a spinning back kick, and outstruck all fight long. So I'm not totally writing Jimmy Rivera off. I think he's a very solid Tiger Showman guy. He's been around for the game for years. Former Ring of Combat veteran from around this tri-state area. So I respect the guy a lot, and I think that the betting line is a little wide just because he looked kind of off last fight. But, Yan is just, the complete package, man. I've been so impressed by this guy. His boxing is tremendous. He switches stances, better than anybody in the UFC, really. He's got solid boxing defense, although he did get caught with the left hand versus John Dodson last fight, and then he got dropped momentarily, but he recovered quickly, and he still won the round. He was winning the round before the knockdown. He recovered quickly and then kept putting the pace on Dodson, winning that fight, very decisively. And Jan's, wrestling game is crazy good, man. He can hit offensive takedowns, all different types of takedowns, and his takedown defense is incredible, man. He has great balance. He can stuff takedowns. He stuffed Dodson's takedowns easily, who's a great wrestler of his own. Got taken down in round 3 of their fight with the Dodson, but again, popped right back up to his feet, just pushed down on the head, and got back to his feet. So Petr Yan has, done nothing but impress me. He's only had one real hiccup, and that was getting dropped by Dodson in their fight. But other than that, has looked dominant. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, once more, I think the line is a little wide right now. I do see Yan winning this fight wherever it goes. I think he should be the better boxer on the feet. I think he should be the better grappler on the ground. I honestly see this fight playing out on the feet, and I just think that Petr Yan, out volumes and lands the cleaner, harder strikes all fight to a decision, 30-27 in this fight. All right, so the next fight is in the lightweight division, man. A crazy fucking fight right here. Tony Ferguson, who is 24-3, taking on Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who I can't see his record, 36-11. The opening betting line for this one was Ferguson minus 245 to Cerrone plus 175. Right now, looking over at 5 dimes, line margins have tightened up quite a bit. We got Ferguson at minus 142, Cerrone at plus 120. So shocking line movement in this one. When I first heard this fight announced, I honestly capped Ferguson at minus 300 with a 75% implied probability that he would win this one. But the odds makers capped it a little closer than that, and the public has capped it even closer than the odds makers. So a lot of money coming in on Donald Cerrone in this matchup. Who are you picking in this one, Josh? Cowboy or El Cucuy?
So I'm gonna have to go with my man Cucuy for sure. The only thing that really puts a doubt in my mind was if that stuff outside of the cage really has affected him in any sort of manner, affecting his focus, his training, just his overall family life. We see a lot of fighters throughout the years and still currently today, actions outside of the cage do play a major role in not only their training but their mentality. Mentality is going to be huge. Donald Cerrone, not taking away anything from him, he's on a tear right now. Just an absolute beast. But I just don't see Tony getting tired here, just keeping constant pressure on him. Him versus Pettis, him coming off that, 4 to 6 months after his knee surgery, hopping right in there with some guy that just came out and knocked out Wonder Boy with an incredible Superman punch. Putting on a show of the night with him. After 4 months, 6 months out of being out of training is absolutely ridiculous to me. Tony's a tough guy, but yeah, I don't really see anything going towards Cerrone's way. I mean, this is fighting; anything can happen. But my man Ferguson, I think he takes this one overall. I mean, he's just an absolute monster. I see him walking down Cerrone the whole time, just being on the attack and just really putting the pressure on him.
Yeah, I'm in the same mentality with pretty much everything there. Good point about bringing up the personal problems outside of the cage. So a lot of the times I think they're exaggerated. Personal problems, but this one, is real.
Absolutely,
It's some major paranoia going on with Ferguson. But the reason why I don't think it's going to play a factor is because if you go back and listen to the commentary in that Pettis fight, his most recent fight, all the commentators are like, man, Tony Ferguson's a madman. He's crazy. And they're like, Tony Ferguson refused any physical therapy. Like, it was clear as day for everyone that Tony Ferguson was a weirdo, that he's a crazy dude, that he does things, a very unorthodox way. It honestly does not shock me at all that he's got some, major paranoia going on. There were rumors that it was a domestic violence issue, but luckily, it was confirmed that he did not hit his wife, he did not hit his kids, he didn't, it was not a physical violence of any type of way.
Thank God.
I think all that really bad was happened is that the Ferguson's wife told him to leave their son there, and Ferguson took him in the car somewhere or something like that. So I don't see Ferguson's recent troubles outside of the cage playing a factor in this one. So let's get down to the matchup and how these two will go against one another. So Josh brought up Cerrone's tear that he's on lately. Man, this dude has been looking so fucking good. He's fought, I think, 3 times in the past 6 or 7 months. He finished Mike Perry with that armbar at 170, dropped down to 55 for the first time in a few years, and took out the undefeated prospect and Alexander Hernandez. Finished him with a head kick in round 2 of that fight. And then, against Ali Quinta in their 5-rounder just 5 or 6 weeks ago, he, got off to a slow start like usual, lost the first round, and then round 2 started picking apart Ali Quinta. Round 2 was a little close. I don't know who won that one. I honestly remember it being 2-0 for Ali Quinta, but then Cerrone in rounds 3, 4, and 5 was locked in, man, just total flow state, seeing every strike coming, being creative with his striking. That was, probably one of the best Cerrone performances that we've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Just, this dude is, both of these guys are just incredibly well-rounded. Getting to Cerrone first, man, I think Cerrone is the better kicker of these two. He's got, great head kicks. He uses knees to counter pressure when guys are fighting him. That could be something that Cerrone uses in this fight, just like Alex Hernandez was constantly pressuring Cerrone. Cerrone was firing off knees to the body nonstop, and that really took out the gas tank of Alexander Hernandez, which eventually led to that second-round finish from Cerrone. But Cerrone's Achilles heel throughout his entire career has been pressure fighters. It's been guys who put his back to the cage, who constantly walk him down. That's what Dos Anjos did to him what Darren Till did to him a while back, Jorge Masvidal. A lot of guys have beaten him with this game plan, and unfortunately for him, Ferguson is probably one of the best pressure fighters in the division. The first note I got written down for Tony Ferguson is relentless pressure, man. Again, like Peter Yan, man, he'll switch stances on you nonstop. He'll walk you down. He'll throw kicks, knees, elbows, great elbows, man. Ferguson uses elbows, I think, better than any fighter in the UFC. He uses them from such creative angles. If you put him on his back, not only will he be throwing up submissions, triangles, arm bars with his 10th planet jiu-jitsu black belt, he also throws strikes from the bottoms, like hammer fist and elbows from the bottom. And he's just such a creative dude. Even when he gets rocked in fights, even when he gets hurt, he's still attempting creative stuff like rolling out of weird positions and shit like that. The dude is just a ball of creativity in the octagon. He doesn't spar. He's very clear about that. He doesn't it doesn't spar at all before his fights. But when he gets in that cage, man, he looks so comfortable. He never looks hesitant. He just throws whatever it comes to his mind, and he throws it smooth. But Ferguson does have his weaknesses. And I'd say that would be his boxing defense and his chin. The dude gets caught in pretty much all of his fights. The Lando Venata fight comes to mind, and his most recent fight with Pettis, where he had Pettis hurt in the first round. He won the first round, and then he came out in round 2 and got a little complacent, and then got dropped by Anthony Pettis in that fight. Now Ferguson did recover quickly and then go on to keep beating that ass of Anthony Pettis, eventually getting the finish in the second round of that fight. But nonetheless, man, Cerrone is an expert finisher. Unlike some other guys who can get a little flustered when they hurt you with a punch, man, Cerrone picks his shots better than anybody when he hurts you. I don't remember a guy that Cerrone has hurt and not really finished. Maybe Ali Quinto would be the only one. So I expect this one to be close. Cerrone does have a path to victory. He's going to have to be on point. He's going to have to be, circling backwards, striking while moving backwards. But he's not really good at that, man. So he could put on the performance of his lifetime and, counter that pressure fighter, counter that, nonstop, coming forward of Tony Ferguson in this one, but it's going to be a tough task, man. I honestly see Ferguson walking him down with his pressure, swarming him with strikes, elbows, not giving Cerrone any space, no space to kick. Cerrone really needs space to kick to be comfortable in his fights. When the fight is straight boxing, when he's straight moving backwards, that's when things go badly for him. So the pick is going to be Tony Ferguson in this one. Honestly, where the odds are at now, man, I think there's crazy value on Tony Ferguson. I mean, the dude is, I think, you look at his most recent fights, I think he's 13-1 as a favorite or something like that. He's on a 12 or 13 fight win streak. The dude is a winner. He finds ways to win in every single one of his fights. So I'm trusting him to do so now. Tony Ferguson is going to be the pick, and I expect him to get it done by a third round submission. How you thinking Tony Ferguson gets this one done, Josh? You going decision, knockout, submission?
I'm gonna go submission as well. Just because I think that he's going to come with relentless pressure, like you said. He's going to be, doing all of his unorthodox stuff, switching stances, just, doing his normal, just crazy fight style. I feel like, this fight's going to end up in an awkward position. Tony Ferguson's going to find some way, to get an advantage, as he always does, and finish that submission. I'd love to see a knockout here. That would be amazing. I would love to see him, clip Cerrone, and finish him that way. But I really do see this going on the ground, and Ferguson using that jiu-jitsu, getting some sort of, I want to say leg lock. So mark my words. Let's see something about a leg lock.
Yeah, I could see it, panning out similar to the Barbosa fight with Tony Ferguson, where, Ferguson was just hurting Barbosa on the feet. It ended up on the ground in a scramble, and Ferguson snatched up that, I think it was a Darce. No, it was an Anaconda in that fight. But, he's got a wicked Darce, a wicked Anaconda. He's got good guillotines, triangles, man, rear naked chokes. He can really tap you out in a plethora of different ways. And, I expect it to be like an accumulated damage type of thing, where after 2 or 3 rounds of, just Cerrone eating all of Ferguson's best shots, Ferguson will see an opening for a takedown. We'll see an opening for, maybe an Imanari roll. He likes doing crazy leg locks, like you said, and get the fight to the ground somehow, and then snatch up a submission. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see this one go to the scorecards, Cerrone's ground game is terrific. His wrestling is good. His submission game is really solid. So I could see it being a decision, but eventually I'm gonna go with Ferguson by submission.
For sure. If Cerrone manages to keep that pressure off of him, kind of stay on the outside, work around him, he's not the best fighter, going backwards, but if he can manage to, Ferguson's never going to get tired. I mean, the guy trains 6 hours straight, all the time. He's an absolute animal, but if Cerrone can somehow, kind of try to mitigate that forward pressure, and keep the distance, kind of use them kicks to his advantage, throw the knees to the body inside, kind of try to wear Ferguson down, maybe, they'll go back and forth a little bit and it will go to scorecards, but hopefully we'll see a finish in there.
All right, so we're going to move on to the co-main event of the evening in the women's flyweight division. We have the champion Valentina Shevchenko, who is 16-3, taking on the challenger Jessica Eye, who is 14-6. The opening betting line for this one was Valentina Shevchenko, the minus 1250 favorite, to Jessica Eye at plus 825. Right now, over on 5 Dimes, we are seeing Valentina Shevchenko minus 1375 to Jessica Eye at plus 900. So Jessica Eye opening up as the minus 1250 favorite, right now sitting at minus 1375. That gives her implied probability at 93.2% chance to win this fight. So what we're looking at this type of fight. It's Valentina Shevchenko is a dominant champion. She's looking for any type of challenger who is worthy. Jessica Eye, I guess you could say she's worthy of the title. She has racked up 3 fights in a row, 3 wins in a row. Although her last fight, I believe that she lost that fight, a close fight to Chookagian, but I had Chookagian winning rounds 1 and 3 of that fight. But it was a split decision, and the judges did give to Eye, not a robbery by any means. It was really close, but I did give it to Chookagian, so it's interesting seeing that she's getting the title shot off of this one. And Jessica Eye, a girl who came into the UFC and was, 1-5-1 at one point, now working her way back up to a title shot. So very impressive story from her. She's had a definite career turnaround. Took the whole year of 2017 off and came back in 2018 as a flyweight and picked up 3 nice wins over Kalinja Faria, Jessica Rose Clark, and Chookagian. So she, like I said, she worked her way up to the title shot, but unfortunately, I think that she just brings nothing to the table that could pose a problem for Valentina Shevchenko in any way. Eye comes out super aggressive. Her striking isn't very technical. She has very bad footwork. She's decent in the clinch, she's trying to take her fights to the ground, but her takedowns are sloppy, they're telegraphed, they're not set up well at all. She was, outstruck by Katlyn Chookagian in my opinion. Had a lot of trouble with the kicks of Chookagian. So I see Shevchenko being better wherever this fight goes. Shevchenko needs no introduction. Terrific kickboxer, judo black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt. It's got a solid wrestling game. Got really nice submissions in the UFC. Over Juliana Pena is the one that comes to mind. She just outstruck Joanna Jędrzejczyk, one of the best female strikers in UFC history in her last fight. That spinning back kick was on point. Her distance control was on point. Everything about Shevchenko is, she does pretty much perfectly. One of the best pound-for-pound females on the roster, probably in history, honestly. So I expect Shevchenko to dominate wherever this fight goes. I see it being mostly contested on the feet. I think that I will try to, take this fight to the floor, but I think Shevchenko will just stuff the takedowns easily. Shevchenko has shown a little bit of issues with her aggressiveness in fights. I think that she could have finished the fight against Joanna last fight, but she was just content to ride it out for a decision. But Joanna is an actually dangerous opponent, while Jessica Eye is not really. So I could see Shevchenko getting this fight to the floor and cinching up a submission on Eye, or I could see Shevchenko getting an accumulated TKO type of finish where she the damage just accumulates on Eye and eventually the referee is forced to stop the fight. So I'm picking Shevchenko, but I'm gonna go with decision because I think she's just a little tentative. She's playing things safe, and I think she'll coast to a decision. How are you picking this one to get done? I heard you got eye by knockout. Is that true?
Absolutely not. I'm gonna have to go with the favorite Valentina here. And I like what you said about how eyes striking really isn't that technical. Valentina Shevchenko, being a former kickboxer, predominantly, I mean, she has 58 total kickboxing fights with 56 wins. I don't really think Jessica Ai really brings anything to the table, like you said before, that Shevchenko hasn't seen before. I think she's going to be able to pretty much see everything that's telegraphed, everything that's coming at her, and really have no problem. She went up against Xiaonan with absolutely no issues. I really don't see Jessica Ai really, bringing anything to the table that can really surprise Shevchenko. Although, if she can work her wrestling a little bit, maybe can get in on something, but I really don't see anything changing from the odds right now. Jessica Ai, just like you said before, very, very sloppy. Just kind of trying to go over their numbers a little bit right now, just look at the previous amateur records and stuff like that. Jessica Ai, other than that, bringing that record up and really putting in work and doing all that kind of stuff, that's great improvement and everything. I just really don't think it's enough to really stop Shevchenko. I think her striking is too good. She's gonna be able to gauge distance very, very well. I do see this fight going the distance. I don't really see anything, in terms of knockout. I don't really see Shevchenko putting that power in, like you said, having a problem a little bit with the aggressiveness. So I don't really see her coming out and slugging and finishing the fight. But I do think that Shevchenko wins this in a large margin, by decision. But we'll see how it goes.
Yep, we're in agreement there. And honestly, when I think about this fight, it's just, especially watching that Chookagian fight, it just refreshed my memory that, Chookagian won that fight, and she unfortunately did not get the title shot. And I honestly think that if Chookagian were in this spot, I think the odds would be maybe plus 300 Chookagian compared to plus 900 for Ai. Chookagian's got really legitimate striking. She trains at Danaher's in New York. She's got a really solid jiu-jitsu game. She doesn't really use it too much in the UFC, but she can definitely fall back on it and I think be competitive in the grappling with Shevchenko. So that would have been the much closer fight, much more interesting, but unfortunately we got this fight. It's going to be a squash match, and I expect Shevchenko to defend her belt effortlessly.
Yeah, it was a sloppy thing to just throw that on the main card as co-main event. I completely agree with you in putting that as the main fight on the prelim card, just to kind of get some exposure. It's not going to be full out slugging on ESPN, but she's definitely going to be able to show her skill set. Obviously talking about Valentina Shevchenko here, and I mean this is going to be won by a large margin on paper, but that would have been so much of a better idea to just put that as a prelim. They're fighting for the belt, a lot of hype around it, blah 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 blah. I think this was a stupid fight to put as the co-main event for sure. I think that if anything, you got to move that Sterling Pedro Munhoz onto the main card, and then drop that fight that Shevchenko Jessica Ai fight onto the main fight on the prelim card. I think that would be a better idea.
Yeah, the UFC, especially Dana, tends to have really short memory when it comes to these things with title fights. I remember a reporter suggested to Dana before that why don't they put maybe a non-title fight above a title fight on a pay-per-view, and he said no, we don't do that type of thing. We did it once and it didn't work. They did do it once at UFC 196 when McGregor and Diaz headlined over Tate and Holm. That fight did 1.6 million pay-per-views, one of the most successful UFC fights ever. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. They also in UFC 200, Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar fought for the interim featherweight title fight as the second of 5 fights on the main card. Then Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt fought. Then DC and Anderson Silva fought, and then Nunes and Tate fought for the title. So they've done title and then 2 non-title fights and then another title fight. So there's precedent for this, for you to put a title fight on, maybe not the co-main event. I really hope that Shevchenko comes out here, dominates, and gets this fight over quickly, because I honestly think that Shevchenko has a lot to lose in this fight. If she comes out here and puts on a boring decision over Jessica Ai, fighting,
mediocre fighter.
yeah, we're gonna get Ferguson, Cerrone going a fucking war, bleeding all over each other, throwing elbows, and then we're gonna have a possible snooze fest for 25 minutes.
Yep.
It's gonna kill all the momentum in the arena. So I hope Shevchenko comes out here and gets this one done by finish. Even though I'm predicting decision, I think that's the most likely. I'm hoping for the sake of the sport, the sake of the card, and the sake of the Shevchenko's fans, that I hope that she gets this one over with quickly, because she is completely on another level than Jessica Ai.
And how do you look at Tony Ferguson and Donald Cerrone, who were just in the conversation? Donald Cerrone was just in the conversation with Conor McGregor as a co-main event. Not that long ago. How do you look at that fight and say, that's not a co-main event fight? Let's put Shevchenko and Jessica Ai, which, like you said, is most likely going to be a snooze fest, and just an absolute blowout in general. For the co-main event, it's going to kill all the momentum. Unless something crazy happens. Like, how do you look at this Tony Ferguson, Donald Cerrone fight, knowing it's going to be a war, knowing these guys are both going to come out here and give it their all? They both have tremendous amounts of things to prove, so they're going to be coming out really, really strong. Donald Cerrone is chasing after that belt run. Tony Ferguson trying to get his name back in the conversation, trying to get up to the ranks, maybe trying to get a Khabib fight again. Just both guys have so much to strive for, and that they're going to be coming out slugging. How do you not put that as a co-main event fight? It blows my mind that this Shevchenko Jessica Ai fight is co-main event. Drop that to the prelim card, move Sterling and Munhoz up to the main card, and then move Ferguson and Cerrone up to the co-main event. Like, I just don't understand what the thinking was. I think it's just fucking stupid.
Yeah, the UFC's like I said, they made this mistake before. They put Demetrius Johnson as co-main event, but before they put Xiaonan as co-main event before, and they've had, 5-round, snooze fest. UFC 193, the Holm versus Rousey, one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. What were you doing when you watched it? I was sleeping because I fell asleep during Joanna versus Valerie Letourneau. It was the most boring, dominant fight ever. And I fell asleep in the co-main event and missed one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. So, but we're not bashing this too hard. It's a worthy fight. It's understandable that it's co-main event, but we're just in the mind that it's time for the UFC to try something new, change things up, and not be afraid to take a risk.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, we're going to move on to the main event of the evening for the UFC vacant bantamweight title fight that TJ Dillashaw has vacated. We got the UFC flyweight champion Henry Cejudo, who is 14-2, taking on Magic Marlon Moraes, who is 22-5-1. Now, the opening betting line for this one was Marlon Moraes, the -175 favorite, to Henry Cejudo as the +150 underdog. Right now, over on 5 Dimes, we are seeing Marlon Moraes -130 to Henry Cejudo at +110. So I started things off giving my opinion on the first couple fights, so I'll let you, Josh, give your opinion on this fight to start things off.
Oh, man. What a fight. So much hype around it, so much on the line. Henry Cejudo coming off, the fight of his career, beating TJ Dillashaw, who, as we all know, being enhanced, popping for the EPO, which helps crazy cardiovascular, helps you cut tremendously. Henry Cejudo's on the top of the world right now, still obviously preaching about that Olympic gold medal all the time. But Marlon Moraes, man, with heavy strikes, great wrestling, tremendous head kicks, loves to go to the body. I don't know, man. This is such a toss-up. I do think that Cejudo always rises to the occasion when he has to. He does let losses really affect him. We saw that with DJ. That loss really did kind of springboard him into being the champion that he is today. Marlon Moraes, just an absolute fucking animal. I really see this fight. I gotta say, I got to give this to Moraes, just in the fact that I think that Cejudo maybe goes in too aggressively off the start, kind of like how he did with TJ, but then gets caught with some kind of head kick, some kind of knee. Cejudo's going to definitely try to work that wrestling on Moraes, but I think that his kicks and his power is just going to be too much for Cejudo. But this is going to be such a fucking bash, man. I can't wait to watch this fight. I'm going to be jittery, but we'll look forward to seeing what happens. But this matchup is great. Man, I have to go with Moraes, but I want to say Cejudo just because he does rise to the occasion whenever he has to step up. But I'm going to go with my man Moraes.
Yeah, it's a great point about Cejudo, rising to the occasion. He lost that fight by knockout to Demetrius Johnson. And then the rematch, a fight that he was almost a 4-1 underdog in, he came in and stole that fight on the scorecards away from Demetrius Johnson. So this is really a 50-50 type of fight in my opinion. There are a couple guys have advantages. I'd say the speed advantage goes to Cejudo. Speed is a huge factor in between these weight class these battles. When DC moved up from light heavyweight to heavyweight, he was the faster puncher and he knocked out Stipe Miocic. When Amanda Nunes moved up to fight Cyborg at 145, she was the faster puncher and she knocked out Chris Cyborg. So it's and then the fight that with Cejudo and Dillashaw, they were, I guess Dillashaw was moving down in weight, so that was a little bit of a different factor there. But I still think the speed of the flyweight Cejudo was a big adjustment for the bantamweight TJ to adjust to. So I'm definitely giving the speed advantage to Cejudo, definitely giving the wrestling edge to Cejudo. Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, he'll never let you forget that. I mean, this dude's takedowns are it's the highest level we've ever seen in the UFC. We've seen incredible wrestlers before, like Yoel Romero and all different types of guys, but there is nobody better in the UFC history, MMA history, who has better wrestling than Henry Cejudo.
100% agree. 100%.
And it's very easy to understand because that gold medal, but man, this dude will shoot in on a double leg takedown, and then he'll go to clinch you, and then he'll inside or outside trip you, or he'll knee you to the body, and then before his foot even hits the ground, he's inside tripping you. I mean, he will string 3 takedowns together in 3 seconds. Like he will shoot, like I said, the exact sequence that he took down Demetrius Johnson with multiple times is he shoots for the legs, gets you sprawling a little bit, then clinches you up, fires a knee, and then inside trips you. He did that 3 or 4 times versus Demetrius Johnson, and actually kept DJ on his back a few times in those fights. A lot of the takedowns that Cejudo got in that fight, DJ was able to Grammy roll, or he was able to get back up to his feet very quickly. But there were also a couple takedowns where Cejudo was put DJ on his back and kept him there, and used that solid top pressure and that shoulder pressure to keep DJ on his back for a little bit. So, but even though Cejudo did so well in that fight, I still had Demetrius Johnson winning rounds 1, 3, and 5 of that fight. I watched it last night and I was scoring it live. I watched the whole fight, and then I was like, you know what? I have all the clear rounds except for round 3. I went back and watched round 3 again, and I scored that one to DJ. I checked my phone for the Verdict app, and I went back and saw how I scored that fight in real time, and I scored the exact same, Demetrius Johnson, in rounds 1, 3, and 5. So it was a split decision. It was a razor thin decision. I clearly see how the judges gave that fight to Cejudo, but I still had DJ winning. So that's a big factor in this one, because even though Cejudo put on an incredible performance, the best performance of his career, he still came up short in my opinion. I still had DJ winning that fight 3 rounds to 2. What you pin Moraes' attributes well. He's a crisp and powerful striker. All of his striking techniques are with perfect technique. He's got great head kicks, knocking out a couple. He knocked out Aljamain Sterling with that knee/head kick combination type of thing. He knocked out Jimmy Rivera with a head kick. He rocked Rafael Assunção with right hooks and then snatched that guillotine in his most recent fights. He's coming off of 3 straight first round finishes. So, Moraes is a motherfucker, man. I think that even though Cejudo will have the speed advantage, I think Moraes is going to have the power advantage, And I think that, I'm going to come out and say this. I think both of these guys are juiced to the gills right now. I think, despite what you hear, both of them talking all that shit on TJ, I think both of them are clients of Ali Abdelaziz, the snakiest guy in MMA.
Dude, look at Moraes' freaking arms and his shoulders. I mean, like, He's that peeled. He's that strong. He's that conditioned. Like, you don't get that. You don't get that without some sort of substance helping you. Like, he is absolutely peeled. Like, a guy like, he looks like he's about to step on stage for a bodybuilding show. I mean, like, come on now.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this dude was on the 2008 wrestling Olympic team. So, all right, he's in the Olympics. He was, younger at that time, less damage in his body. The Olympics is a more serious competition than the UFC. You would have think he would have been in the best shape of his life back then, right? No, he's put on a lot of weight since then, a ridiculous amount of muscle. Even if you look at pictures of Cejudo from a few years ago when he first got in the UFC, when he was rocking those gold shorts, and now, man, he has put on an insane amount of muscle mass. Dude's got veins coming out of everything. And Marlon Moraes has been chiseled for years, man. This dude, his six-pack looks like Michelangelo carved it. This dude's body is like a masterpiece, not a shred of body fat, just straight muscle. So I do believe that both of these guys are juiced to the gills. So I expect a really good fight. And another testament to that is no one has ever had better cardio than Demetrius Johnson. And Cejudo took the fight. He was the aggressor. He was walking down DJ all fight. He was shooting takedowns. He was chaining together takedowns in the fourth and the fifth rounds. Cejudo's cardio was absolutely insane in that fight. Would not be surprised one bit if he was on EPO himself in that one. Yeah, that's the picture right now. Cejudo posted this picture from 4 days ago where he looks like, an absolute fucking killer.
He looks like a cloud. And the thing is too, Coach Bill was just talking to me about this as well. After we got done rolling, all of these guys, especially TJ, when you saw him, start to look completely shredded, peeled, all that kind of stuff. What were they doing? They're preaching their strength and conditioning, eating, all this kind of stuff. They're trying to make it, that a factor. Trying to, almost kind of justify the reason why they're getting so big. Blah blah blah. Everybody who fights is in shape. Everybody who trains is in shape. Okay, but these guys look like supreme primetime bodybuilders. And what are they doing? They're pushing their constantly. Oh, we're in the gym. Look, here's two videos here's a video of him doing a strength and conditioning with his coach. Another strength and conditioning picture. We go down here a little bit. Him, flexing, talking about his strength and conditioning again. Like, the strength and conditioning thing again. Like, they're just constantly trying to preach, oh yeah, we're putting on all the size and muscle, but in reality, are there other substances here at hand what they were just talking shit on? Look, another eating thing. Like,
yeah, so what you mentioned about the EPO, when TJ was, they tested his samples from the Garbrandt fights, and he did not test positive for EPO in either one. But what you mentioned about EPO helping you make weight and everything, he tested positive when he had to move down 10 pounds in weight. He was already sucking himself down to 135, but he had to get an extra 10 pounds, and then he popped for that EPO. Now Cejudo has to move up in weight. He has to put on more muscle. What helps you put on more muscle? Performance enhancing drugs. So I'm nothing against the two of them. I mean, I think these dudes should be juiced up on everything. I hope we have a better fight on Saturday night because of it. But let it be known that these two guys are on a little more than their Flintstone vitamins. Yeah. So
and how about Marlon Moraes training not too far from here? Training in Jersey and New York. Getting in a lot of work with the man Kafaro who comes in here. That's pretty cool too. Just seeing hometown dude coming from Brazil, coming around here, fighting for the UFC belt, which is awesome. But this fight is a fucking smoke show of a fight. I mean, this is gonna be a battle. I don't know about you. I'm like jittery about this fight. I don't see anything. There's so much on the line here. That vacant belt. Just sitting there, and then what happens when TJ comes back in 2 years? Let's see where these guys are at. And get that kind of in the discussion a little bit there too.
Yeah. So coming down to who I think is going to win the fight, I do think it's 50-50 honestly. Early in the fight, I give the edge to Moraes. I think that power edge will be big. And I think that, Moraes has a good chance of clipping Cejudo with a punch or a kick in the rounds 1 or 2 of this fight and, getting the finish that way. I'd say there's around 30% chance of that. But, his chances wean off big time. Moraes has, slowed down in fights like the Dodson fight. We've never seen, or I think he might have gone the full 5 rounds back in World Series of Fighting, but we have not seen Marlon Moraes go the full 5 rounds in a few years, and we've seen Cejudo go the full hard 5 rounds against one of the greatest fighters of all time, very, very recently. So, Moraes, his last time he went the full 5 rounds was against Josh Hill back in 2015. So,
Wow.
it's gonna be big, man. The later this fight goes, the better it goes for Cejudo. I think that that EPO will kick in, the wrestling will kick in. I think that I'd say there is an equally likely outcome that Moraes finishes early as to Cejudo winning by decision. So I think Cejudo could finish. I think Moraes could win by decision. But the two most likely outcomes I think are Moraes finish in rounds 1 or 2, or Cejudo in rounds the decision for Cejudo. So, gun to my head, I'm gonna go with Moraes. I think that what this dude has been doing to high level bantamweights, been knocking out high level bantamweights. Like I said, Jimmy Rivera was on that 20-fight win streak or something like that. Aljamain Sterling has looked incredible lately. Again, Rafael Assunção is something like 10-3 in the UFC. Had a win over Moraes, and Moraes went in there and stopped him. I think Moraes is really on a new level right now. While Cejudo, his past 2 wins, both of them kind of got a little bit of asterisks next to it. He lost the fight 3-2, and he got gifted decision in a close fight. Nothing too wrong with that. And then he went out there and dusted TJ in 25 seconds. When TJ was going down to 25, but not taking anything away from Cejudo. He blitzed TJ in that fight, was throwing head kicks, was throwing punches, and caught TJ behind the ear with a right hand and put him down. But that fight was at 25. That was against a 35er who was sucking himself down to get to 25. That fight, I think TJ underestimated the striking of Cejudo big time, and I don't think that Moraes will do that. I think Moraes is going to come in here, as prepared as ever, and I'm going to go with Moraes picking up that finish in the first couple of rounds. Although, would not be totally surprised, and I would actually be delighted to see this fight go to decision, man. I want to see Cejudo wrestle. I want to see these two wrestle. I want to see Cejudo string together those takedowns, because the sequences that Cejudo was hitting on DJ, and the counters that DJ was hitting on Cejudo in that fight were absolutely out of this world. So I hope we get to see something similar to that again. And I'm going to lean Moraes. I'm cheering for Cejudo, honestly, though. I got a little bet on Cejudo at when he was up at the +4 or +150 range. So I'm going to let that one ride and cheer for Cejudo in this one. But where the value is at in the betting line right now, I definitely think it's on Moraes. Moraes is the proven 135er. Cejudo's fought at 135 before when he was having weight cut issues back when he first joined the UFC. He picked up a decision victory over Dustin Kimura. It was a very nice performance from Cejudo, but I just don't think that we've seen enough at 35 from Cejudo to be confident in him to go in there, go up and take out one of the best 135ers in the world. So the pick is going to be Magic Moraes to get his unified belt in this one.
Sure. Yeah, I like what you pointed out there too. About if Cejudo can keep this fight going, into the later rounds. Just because I didn't know that was the last time Moraes was in, a full 5 rounds was back in 2015. That is a significant time gap. Cejudo loves going into them deep, deep into the fight, getting that full 25 minutes. I mean, and that he can do that just because of how hard he works. Having that wrestler mentality, being an Olympic champion, all that kind of stuff. He loves to dig deep. I see Moraes stopping him. I see Cejudo, maybe shooting in a little bit, early, trying something like that, and Moraes just, overwhelming him with power, hitting him with a head kick, hitting him with a knee, and just overwhelming him with power. But like you said, if Cejudo can drag this fight into the later rounds, kind of get Moraes to work a little bit harder, use that wrestling to tear him down, I feel like, that could be the way, Cejudo pulls this out. He just got to be real careful with the power of Moraes, try to really work him, wear him down, not come in there with too much, forward pressure. I know Moraes likes to, throw them head kicks and then, kind of settle down a little bit and then kind of clip you when you're not expecting it. So, we'll see how this goes. But this is a fucking hell of a fight, though.
Yeah, I think if Cejudo comes out wrestling from the jump, I think that he will have that early success and he will take away that knockout threat early from Moraes. But if he gets cute and, thinks he's a kickboxer now, that he knocked out TJ, he tries to, mess around on the feet, I think that's where Moraes will clip him.
Yep.
So Like you said, though, incredible fight for this one. Really true 50-50 type of fight. Can't wait for this one. UFC 238 is, stacked top to bottom, prelims to main event. It's got incredible close matchups, and can't wait for this fight to go, this pay-per-view card to go down. All right, so that's going to do it for the UFC 238 edition of the Martian MMA podcast. I want to thank my man Josh for coming on. We talked for 50 minutes. It went pretty quick. I gotta say so myself. So it's been a pleasure having you on. We talked about these fights. Now I'll have to have you back on in the future, and we can talk about some more jiu-jitsu, amateur Muay Thai stuff, or Muay Thai amateur MMA stuff. So we got to do that in the future. But for now, thanks for coming on, man.
For sure, man. Thank you very much for having me. This was a blast. I love talking about this kind of stuff all day. I mean, I can go for days. I really, thank you very much for having me on here. We definitely got to do this again. Get a little bit more of the mix in. Some of these cards coming up, you know what I mean? Especially that Holloway Poirier John that just passed. We could chop it up a little bit about that off the podcast. Kind of go into the Khabib Poirier stuff now coming up soon in Abu Dhabi. That just got signed. So a lot of big shit on the horizon. But thank you again very, very much for having me on here. I know we've been talking about this for a minute, but finally got it done. But yeah, thank you very much again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure, brother. So we're off of the UFC next week, but we will be back with the UFC South Carolina card going down June 22nd. So we will see you then. Peace.